Welcome, welcome, everybody. Hello, hello, and welcome to our session on how to choose a clarinet piece for a recital, specifically clarinet, because I am Debbie Andrus, the clarinet guide. And my goal today is to help everybody choose a piece at their level to perform in a recital. When you pick a piece to perform in a recital, excuse me, you end up choosing something ideally that moves you and makes you feel something. So you want to actually like the piece that you've chosen. That's really important. You also want to pick something that you are going to be okay with working on for several months most of the time. In Clarinet Transformation Community, Michelle Anderson's community, we will be doing 2 recitals in March. So we have about 8 weeks, I think, between now and the first performance. So you want to make sure that you're going to be interested in working on that piece for that long of a time. So what I'm going to do is walk you guys through how I choose pieces for my students. And hopefully this will give you at least a starting place, a jumping off place to be able to choose it. And what I said before we started recording is, what piece do you want to perform actually kind of comes from you initially. You have to figure out what moves you, what makes you feel good or bad or sad or happy, or at least makes you feel emotions. Some people will feel more connected to pop music. Some people will feel more connected to folk music or jazz. Other people will dive into things that are more classically oriented. I'm going to speak from that perspective as a clarinet professor and a clarinet teacher. That's just really what I know the most about. So I'm going to speak from that perspective. And so I'm generally going to be talking about music written for the clarinet, which basically happened around from 1750 forward. So when we think big picture classical music, we think anything that you would hear an orchestra play, for example, or something on a recital even. Classical big picture kind of encompasses Baroque music, medieval music, all these different eras. But clarinet music specifically written for the clarinet started around 1750 forward. So we really generally have the classical era, the romantic era, and the modern era to look at. I'm going to look at 3 different pieces at 3 different levels. So first thing first, find what speaks to you. What piece do you enjoy playing? What piece do you feel good about playing? And then we have to ask ourselves a couple other questions. Style, that may, shift from person to person. Level is something we want to talk about. You want to think about, are you kind of, and I'm going to speak specifically to clarinet, are you a newer player? Have you just been playing in the last year or two? Do you play comfortably in the low register and maybe a little bit into the clarion register? I would use Marilyn's new term, emerging clarinetist, I would call you. We call it newer player, or returning player could be like somebody who played in high school and then didn't play for a long time. Marilyn, I don't know if you can turn off the doorbell. I don't know how to do that, but it's okay. Then never mind. It'll just keep ding donging. It's fine. An intermediate player is somebody I would define that plays easily in our lower or chalumeau register and in the clarion register, is in the process of improving technical speed, articulation, maybe even starting the altissimo register, but it's not necessarily comfortable to tongue really fast or play really fast fingers. And then an advanced player would be somebody that can play easily throughout all the registers, comfortable with most articulation styles, still developing, in control and all those things, but can play in all the registers of the clarinet, including the altissimo. So with those structures, I'm going to walk you through choosing a piece and how I would approach it. So for the emerging player, I'm going to start with a piece from a book that Marilyn and I wrote called The Chalumeau Register. And in this book, we have duets at the back. And the duets can be played the melody line is the top line pretty much all the time. So you could play this without anybody else. You could just play it yourself, or you could play it with a friend, or you could record both parts. And there's some different technologies that allow you to do that and present that as a recital piece. So I'm going to start with the very first duet that we have in here. And this would be absolutely perfect for an emerging player. And what I like about it is that it's a real piece of music that people might enjoy listening to and people would enjoy playing. Actually, I'm going to start with the second duet. So here, I'll share my screen. And these are not recorded yet, but that is something maybe we will do so that there would be an opportunity for you to listen to this before you play it. I like to start from the listening perspective first before I start to look at the music, but we don't have that option. So we can take a look at this, and we would just do P1, which would be always the top line. And so it's in the low register. All the duets in this book on the top part, they're all staying in our lowest register. That's the register that most people feel the most confident about because that's where we start as clarinetists. So we can take a look, and it has a very nice range. It doesn't go too high. It does have some sharps, so you would need to be comfortable with changing notes and going into the sharps. The rhythm is very straightforward. We have half notes and quarter notes. The accompaniment part is a little more challenging, but that would be not necessary if you didn't want to. So if you liked how this one looked, then you might take a look and play through it a little bit and see, do I like how it sounds? As I say at the very top, it's in A minor. Things in major keys are going to sound happier. Things in minor keys are going to sound darker or sadder. And then I'm going to scoop back and just take a look at the very first duet, which is the simplest duet altogether. It is in C major. And for this one, you can see it's incredibly simple. You just are playing quarter notes and holding a whole note while the accompaniment is moving. This would be something that would be very easy to play confidently and to put together. And there is a rest halfway through, so you could have a little bit of a break. So if I was a brand new player, I might choose this first duet. Why? Because everything is very straightforward, and I can do all the things that are asked for in this piece. I can play long notes, I can play shorter notes, I can tongue, and it's easy because the accompaniment is almost in the same rhythm as the solo. That is really important when you're thinking about putting something together with someone else. The bottom portion of this next duet, I would consider a little bit more intermediate because it has more moving notes and eighth rests and some different things that are a little bit more challenging. The top part would be perfect for a newer player, but maybe the person playing with you might need to be an intermediate player. So the next step would be obviously to see if you like how it sounds. And so you would just go ahead and play through both choices and see if either one sort of speaks to you. The next piece I'm going to cover is an intermediate piece. And then I'll talk a little bit more about how they came to these delineations as well. So the next piece we're going to talk about is Neil Scotty. I have to look it up because I think I moved it. Let's see. Oh, well, I can actually do it in a different way. The next thing I'm going to do is we're going to start by listening. So that's what I mentioned before. So we're going to listen to this piece a little bit. And while we do that, we can see. So I'm going to share my screen. I went to YouTube, and YouTube can be awesome for finding something for the first time. You have a lot of choices of clarinetists. Any of these look fine, but since I'm specifically going to speak about this first fantasy piece, number one, I'm going to choose this Nikolai Pfeiffer recording. There'll probably be a commercial, so I apologize.
Sally, your shipment has been delayed. Click the link to track. Next.
McAfee Plus is like using a lie detector to alert you if a text is a scam. Get all-in-one protection with McAfee Plus.
Gotta love it. All right, moving on. Beautiful. So, for me, I find that to be a really beautiful piece. And I can just tell you, because of my experience as a clarinet teacher, that's about an intermediate level. It's in the low register, it's in the middle register. It does have a piano accompaniment. And so next, I'd like to go ahead and look at this piece. So we're going to go to my screen again, and you just need to see this. Okay. So one of my favorite places to find pieces with clarinet and piano accompaniment is the Clarinet Institute. And all this stuff will be on the handout that I'm going to be giving you, and it has all the links. In this, you can go to free music and then free clarinet sheet music, clarinet and piano. And then the list here is all pieces that are available that are not copyrighted anymore that you could take a look at. But as you can see, it's just an alphabetical list. So it's a little overwhelming if you don't know what level something is at. And so at the end, we're going to share really specific lists that tell you what level pieces are at, so you're able to more easily discern which would be good for you. So we're going to slide down, and that composer was Niels Gade, G-A-D-E. And so we'll slide down and get to the G. And then what's lovely about this is you can open this up, clicking here. Sometimes they have recordings even next to it. And then you can take a look at the piece. I am not going to continue to do that because it's just going to be slow. So we're going to now go ahead and look at the piece. And let's see, does it really fit our goal of it being an intermediate piece? Sometimes the piano music is first in this stuff, and you want to always go to the actual clarinet part. So for example, it has a cover and then it goes directly to the clarinet part, but we need to go to the clarinet music. So hope nobody gets dizzy from this, but I'm going to just slide it all the way down because the clarinet music is at the end of this score. Here we go. So our first movement, oh, and it has a violin part too. That's interesting. So we need to not go to the violin part. So immediately after the piano music, it goes to violin. So clarinet's probably very last. Now we're in clarinet. Good. Okay. So the first movement is up here, Andantino con moto. And I don't know if that's one. Yeah, number 1. Yep. Okay. And so we can see it starts in the clarion register. It is in a pretty good key signature. Has a grace note over the break. That could be a little challenging. The rests are written in the old school way, so that might be confusing, but those are quarter rests. And it has some triplets here, a little bit of a challenge. I think that this fits right exactly in what an intermediate piece would be like. And I see a lot of dynamics. I felt a lot of beauty and pathos coming from the recording. And so I would say, I want to work on this. This looks really interesting and fun. It would challenge me, but it's not impossible. Like this technical section right here does not look overwhelming. The other thing I would look for is, are there places to breathe? And I'm going to show you a different example of a piece where I might not choose it because it would be really difficult. So here you can see there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bars, and then you have a breath. But pretty much whenever there's a long note with a dot, you could probably breathe. So if you needed to put in some other breaths, you would be able to do that there or there or there. As a newer or emerging or intermediate player, this would be something I'd want to think about. And if maybe my break wasn't totally smooth, this would be a really good opportunity to work on smoothing that out. And there's enough here that I would be satisfied working on it over an 8-week period, let's say. All right, so for another example of something that I might not choose, I'm going to show you, and this would be another intermediate piece, and it's a piece that a lot of people love. Now, as I mentioned, when we think of classical music in a big sense, it kind of is anything that could be played in a concert hall, right? But clarinet, again, was pretty much written for specifically after 1750, which means that anything written before that in the Baroque period, for example, like Bach would be somebody that we could play arrangements of. He would be he'd be considered Baroque, but we could play an arrangement of his. So if I took a look at Air on the G string, for example, on the surface, it might look very playable, but it was written for violin originally. And what would have to happen is we would have to put in breath marks in order to play this effectively. And so that would challenge me in a different way. So if I had endurance problems or embouchure problems, even though musically this looks very easy and it would be wonderful to feel it, it might be hard to execute this in the way that somebody might want to. And we have all of these examples, right? Because this is such a popular piece. We would be hearing, oh, you know, Joshua Bell playing Air on a G string, and wanting to make that happen on the clarinet is quite challenging and is really almost an advanced skill. So the next piece I want to talk about is an advanced piece. And then I'm going to get in more specifically to my handout. So I know that some people have been doing the Brahms First Sonata in the clarinet transformation community, and it is an advanced class, I believe, and I 100% agree for many different reasons. And so I'm going to show you exactly why. This came from Clarinet Institute. If you guys can see at the top, it says Clarinet Institute. When you downloaded it, it does that. And this one puts the clarinet part first and the piano part later on. And so we just have to scroll past the intro stuff. So if we looked at this piece up to maybe this line, it actually doesn't look technically very difficult. But the things that we want to look at are the tempo, the intervals, and then if we listen to this, for example, there is incredible complexity. So I'm going to show you guys the piano part with the clarinet part, just so you can see that this might be playable by myself as an advanced clarinetist, but putting it with the accompaniment is incredibly difficult. And I'll show you why before we start talking more generally about this. So that first page, I'm going to go straight to the piano accompaniment. And again, we can see our part is on the top line and the piano part is on the bottom line. It doesn't look too bad here. Like, it's pretty straightforward. They're doing eighth notes, we're doing quarter notes. It's not bad. But then we slide down into here and it starts to get a little more rhythmically complex. And then we get to the second section, which is still on the first page of the clarinet music. And it starts going into triplets with duple and triplets. And we have to tie all of this together exactly for this piece to sound good. And I personally would need to have probably 3 to 5 rehearsals with my pianist as a professional musician to make this at the level that I would think would be acceptable for a performance. Most people do not have the luxury of having a pianist in their back pocket that they can just invite over that could play this piece at a professional level. That's the other thing. This accompaniment is one of the hardest in the entire clarinet repertoire. And there are concertos and other things that are like that. And so I'm going to get into that in just a second, but let me just stop right there and see if we have any questions. Marilyn, did you see anything?
I want to make a comment.
You may.
Scary thought. I do recitals with Debbie frequently. This is the first piece I chose to play with a recorded piano accompaniment. I could have used this advice she's given me.
Yep. But then I was not necessarily in my best form when you first started studying. If anybody doesn't know, I had a brain injury and I was not thinking particularly clearly. But yes.
Anyway, I don't see anything in the chat except hello, greetings.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to go to my handout now and just sort of walk you through some of the things I just really quickly gave you an overview of, because sometimes I think showing how I find stuff is better than telling. But here's the handout that I will be sharing with all of you. First thing you want to do is ask yourself, what do you want to perform? What makes you feel? Feel something. Anything is really what matters, right? And then the next question is, does it need an accompaniment or other musicians to make it work? Some pieces, and if I'm talking specifically in this clarinet situation, classical clarinet repertoire, most of them do, not all of them. There are pieces that are unaccompanied for clarinet. But if you need that, that's actually going to add another component of complexity to your choice. The Brahms in particular is one of those pieces that it doesn't sound right without the accompaniment. It doesn't really make sense. Whereas maybe a klezmer piece, which it would be a folk music piece, you could probably sell it just clarinet on its own. So the style is sort of the next thing that I would go to. And of course, that kind of comes in, like all of this stuff in a way happens simultaneously, but looking for what style does that for you, what style moves you. And so we could think jazz, popular, sacred, folk, or the traditional classical music. And Baroque music most of the time was written for strings and harpsichord. So breathing was not really a thing they had to worry about. So if you choose something from the Baroque era, be aware that you're going to need to put breaths in places that you might have never heard them before in your listening. The classical era would be Haydn, Mozart, Stamitz. Romantic era, and I'm giving, this is very generalized, but this is sort of the main eras for clarinet: Weber, Schumann, and Brahms. And then modern is Hindemith, Stravinsky, and Debussy. And all of these are pieces I'm talking about with accompaniments. So what is your playing level? And so this is what I mentioned earlier, all those different levels, emerging, intermediate, advanced. And then I wanted to have Marilyn talk a little bit about her website in a minute. She has this beautiful website where she is organizing the music, some recordings, different places that you could find accompaniments. She's kind of giving you a one-stop shop for figuring out pieces that work for you. So I'm going to be really excited for her to show you that in a few minutes. Here is my book. All these links will work. The Shalimar Register duet that I showed you could absolutely be played by itself, just playing the top line, part one. That would be a piece right there. You could choose a line from your etude book. If you're using Michelle Anderson's beginner clarinet book, you could pick one song from there. Or if you're using a more traditional etude book, just one song, whatever is sort of has a beginning, a middle, and an end, that is perfectly fine. So as I said, listening, I think, is a really key way to figure out like what is calling to us as people. I like Spotify because it's professional musicians making the recordings, but YouTube can be really great. You just need to sift through some of those performances to find the one that sells you on the piece. And then, as I already demonstrated, looking at the music, these two websites for free music, which means things that were written before 1926, are readily available here and here. But there are tons of pieces, obviously, that are within copyright that you want to consider. And so that next thing is going to, I'll cover that in a minute, but I'm going to turn it now over to Marilyn so she can share a little bit about her one-stop shop.
Okay. Let's see if I've got my sound on, see if I've got my screen on. As I say, the way I came at this recital thing, I was was in a group with Debbie where we do recitals every 6 months or so. And I was getting tired of playing the same old, and I was looking for oddball stuff, and I was scrounging all over the internet to find stuff. And I got tired of doing all that work. So I tried to organize this list of music of things, that a place that I could search for things I might want to play using the principles Debbie's just been talking about. The difference being, I can just, with what I've done, I can just click one link and I will get to all those internet links that she was, while we were listening to one of the things playing, you could see her searching on the internet trying to find the sheet music that she wanted to share with us. I've got that all down to one click, and that's what I think is exciting about what I've got. So let me go to the home page on my website, and I think Debbie's going to have the link in our handout. Up here at the top, we have something that says repertoire. Check it. The first thing you see here is a little how it works. But what we have is music organized by level and by
Marilyn, you're not sharing your screen yet, buddy.
Oh, that would be nice if I would. I said all this neat stuff, and then you don't get to see it in action.
Exactly.
I've got to find Zoom. I do all this technology stuff, but I can't find can't find Zoom when I want it. Zoom.
Yeah, I thought I had some of my stuff pulled up too, and then I just didn't.
Well, I can't find the share screen link, which is really considerably worse. Oh, there it is. There it is. Magic. Share sound. Share the whole screen.
Yes.
There we go. That's the home page that you get to when you type in returningclarinetist.com. Then come up here and hit repertoire, and now we've got the list. And we've got these three links are for the three different levels of clarinetist, and this first page sort of tells you how it works. But let's start by looking at intermediate. Now, Debbie, which one were you sharing? Which piece were you sharing?
I was sharing the Gaude Fantasy Stuka.
Okay, we're gonna look at the same piece of music the way I'm doing it.
Okay.
Okay, down at the bottom of the sheet we have our list of music, And I hope to expand this in the future, but right now, this one happens. Here's the one that Debbie was talking about. I think the fantasy pieces, right, Debbie?
Yep, exactly right.
Okay, here's your composer, here's his dates, here's a little button that says info. Click info. If I click it hard enough, it's going to do a web search and show me all the references to this piece of music. Here's 4 video performances. Here's some places you could buy it if you wanted a clean copy of the music. Here's a link to that's ICA. Anyway, here's one for IMSLP. If you wanted to find the music on IMSLP, you could click that link and get it. But let's just listen a little bit to the first video. This is a different one than Debbie showed.
Yeah, mine was the second one in your list.
This looks like a younger student.
Mm-hmm.
No need to listen to the whole thing. Slightly different perspectives than Debbie has. Debbie wants to go for the highest level of professional performer she can find. Sometimes I like to hear just a guy play it to get a sense for where the limitations might be. Because if I listen to pick your favorite famous clarinetist, if I listen to Giuffretti play this, it's going to sound easy no matter what. So I get a little better flavor sometimes when I listen to just a guy play it.
Not a professional person is kind of
Not a professional person, but just a guy. Now, another thing I like to look for, let's see if I can remember this. Some of these will have score videos, and when I see the music playing along with a score, that helps me get a sense for how difficult it is. Let's see if I can. I think maybe some of the Finzi might have scores. Let's see if okay, yeah, here's some. See these videos that have the little scores, they may not really be really good from a playing perspective, but you can sort of follow along the score.
Rapid relief that lasts and lasts. It's comeback season.
We can't escape those commercials.
I know, unless you pay for a subscription. But some of you, I think, will think that this is one we get it.
Say that again, Marilyn, because music when you were kind of competing.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. The advantage of the score is that you can follow along and you can see the clarinet part in conjunction with the accompaniment. Now, if you're playing accompaniment, particularly if you're playing with recorded accompaniment, the thing to watch out for is places where the accompaniment is resting and you are playing, because at the end of that chunk, you're going to have to time back up and come in with in this case the piano, and that is incredibly difficult to do. And if you already got nerves about doing your first recital, that's a piece of stress you may not want to deal with. So particularly if you have technology issues, I would stay away from that. Let's go back and close this out again and let me show you something else. I've got my list categorized as accompanied or clarinet alone. As Debbie pointed out, the proportion of clarinet alone in the world is quite small relative to the proportion of accompanied. I like to seek these out, and they're easy. You can find quite a few at the advanced level. At the intermediate level, not so many, but here's a nice one, a Gordon Jacob piece. Here I've got videos. I've got places I could buy the music. I've got pictures, and I've got places that I could probably sneak peek at a page, but let's see what this one sounds like.
Yeah, and this is a one that's under copyright.
Yes. And let me point out, if you see a lot of places that you can buy the music, it's under copyright.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times you can find stuff on IMSLP, but it's sometimes Debbie has commented about the quality of the play. I'm going to comment about the quality of the engraving of public music. If you download off of Clarinet Institute, the one she showed you was had marks all over it. And sometimes that makes the music hard to read. So if you find something you like, it might be worth going out and getting a clean copy just so you can read it better.
Yes.
Anyway, let's listen to a little bit of this one. And if you look at my list, let me close that out. I've got advanced, intermediate, and emerging. Mine is still a work in progress. I may develop this a little more if people are interested, but right now there's more in the advanced pot than there is in the emerging plot, largely because I'm the one that graded it, so I had to be able to play it before I could grade it. But if you're interested in one thing I tend to have more of so far is popular music, largely swing kind of stuff. So here I've got something that I call collections, which means it's a book with a bunch of different pieces that you can play from. And these by special arrangement collections are really nice because they're popular music with backing tracks that come with the book. I don't think there's any recordings of these. Oh wait, maybe there are. That's a trombone. Oh. Let's see what Ain't Misbehaving sounds like. You're gonna have a trombone playing, but you can pretend it's a clarinet. It's a bass clarinet.
Perfect. Same thing.
Nice accompaniment tracks. Jane Lee, you would like these. Anyway, very, very nice intermediate level piece.
Oh wow, and he's done a lot. Great.
Oh yeah, this is but they're all trombone. They sound better on clarinet.
Of course.
Not being. I think I have some recordings of some of these on my YouTube channel.
Oh, nice.
Let's see what else we got.
Go down to the etude books, Marilyn, because I want to just say something about that. Etudes can be performance pieces. So if there is an etude from Kristen Denny Chambers' book, or from the David Height Melodious and Progressive Etudes book, or again, like I mentioned, from a beginner clarinet book, if there is just something that you are like, wow, I really love how that sounds, I want to play that, that is completely valid as a recital piece.
Yeah, it's right. Particularly the Rose 32 would be a classic, wonderful choice because they work well. They don't need a piano accompaniment. You don't have that technology struggle
Exactly
to go through. You've got, and they were designed to be played like that. Unlike taking Scene and Air, the Bergson piece, that really doesn't sound right without the accompaniment. I'm sorry, Debbie. I know we played it, but
no, it's true.
It needs the accompaniment to be a complete piece, because one way a recital is different from a master class is you're communicating with the audience. You are putting on a show. You can miss all the notes you want as long as you miss them tastefully. But the important thing with the recital piece is appealing to the audience. If you play something that needs an accompaniment and doesn't, if you play something where there's a 5-bar rest while the piano is playing and you sit there and hold your clarinet silently for 5 bars, that just doesn't work.
Yeah, and I think that's where the Brahms, the Scene and Air, some of those other accompanied pieces, like you definitely need to have that as part of your planning if that's what you want to do.
The Mozart concerto, you could actually probably do better. Oh, here, and the one that does work, Behrman Adagio. Some of the Behrman pieces that are in the Height book would work nicely, even though they're supposed to be accompanied.
Yes, definitely.
And let's go look at the emerging page for a second, because there's
okay. And then I have some assessment and some bigger lists to share with everybody.
Yeah, and one other thing that I didn't point out, if there's a long list of stuff and you don't know where to start, up at the top there's something called the random selection of the day, which gives you something you can go up and click I won't do that right now because I wanted to show you my absolute favorite is the Lester Rambles. And elsewhere on my website, I have a recording. In fact, I think I have let me, Debbie, let me just see if I can't show that recording of
Sure.
of your duets
Oh yeah.
someplace. Here's one of the duets from Shallow Register. Let me save time and not
Hey,
play the
that's
whole
the
thing.
one that I talked about. So
And
perfect.
let me point out that's less than a minute of play. The newer you are at this, the shorter you want to keep your pieces, because
Yeah.
you get the longer you play, the more tense you get. So, and Michelle was saying even 15, if you play for 15 seconds, that would be fine with her.
Exactly.
Uh,
She just wants everybody to have this experience of performing something.
it's very empowering to do this. You can look back and say, "Oh, look what I did." Particularly if you're used to playing in a band where you're all covered up in a group, and you can look back and say, "Oh, look what I did."
Mhm.
Okay, I think that was all I needed to cover in this section, right, Demi?
Exactly right.
Okay,
Thank
I
you so
will
much, Marilyn.
stop sharing and I can figure out how to stop sharing. There it is.
Yeah,
I don't
right.
want to don't want to
And
let
now
Barbara.
I'll share again here if I can make my, oh, it went to full screen and then I can't like move anything around.
That was the problem I was having. I couldn't find anything.
All right. So, um, like I said, I think this resource that Marilyn's developing is going to be incredible for every clarinetist out there, not just, emerging or intermediate. I think it's going to be it's going to change things in such a good way. So, a
Let
couple
me
other.
address some of the questions that are popping up here.
Oh, please, let's do that now and then I'll finish.
Link, you're going to distribute the link to the website, right?
Correct. It's going to be in the handout. Yep.
And it is, yes, it also is in the community.
Correct.
And as far as the comment about grading the grading can be considered a work in progress. Debbie's going to help me eventually, but
I am.
I was just trying to get something out there to see if it works. And some of these pieces, whether they will have one movement that's very advanced and one movement that's not so much, like the Saint Saëns is a classic example
Yeah.
of that. The first and the fourth are probably advanced, and the third is maybe intermediate.
Yep. Second and third, even. Yep. Any other questions that need to be addressed? Good. Well, we have more time at the end. So let me continue and talk a little bit more about questions you want to ask as you're figuring this out. So, some questions you might want to ask are, what key is this piece in? If it's in C major and you're an emerging clarinetist, great. If it's an F sharp major, which means 6 sharps, maybe not so much. So being aware of that aspect, because the fingering complications in something with many sharps is a lot more challenging. So if you're adding challenge, you might want to reduce other challenges. So if the key signature is really hard, you want to choose a slower tempo piece, that kind of thing. I mentioned this earlier. If you'll be enjoying to deep dive on that piece for a couple of months, is it going to be enjoyable or frustrating? And then, as I talked about earlier, a Brahms piece is going to be very complex to put something together. So even playing it with a recorded accompaniment can be very difficult because it actually has slowdowns and speed ups kind of built in, and it's not something where you can just put the metronome on and be done with it. So then you want to assess everything. Why do you want to learn this piece? Who are you playing it for? How long do you need to learn it? Can you express the heart of the music confidently? Because as we said, you want to do something that makes you feel something so that then you can share those feelings through your clarinet to your audience. And if you do need a pianist, how many rehearsals will you need? Or if you're going to use a recorded accompaniment, is it going to be something that's attainable in the amount of time you have? Because you're going to want to do some practice performing, which I will address in our next class on February 16th, talking about actually how to now prepare for the recital. We're just in choosing the music, so let's stay there.
While we're talking about the recital, the February 16th, let me point out that in the Transformation Community calendar, the thing is printed on white text on a yellow background, at least on my browser, so you can't read it. But it's February 17th, and it's how to prepare for the recital. Is that right, Debbie?
February 16th, I think, and it's how to prepare. It's a Friday and it's at 10 a.m. Pacific. And so that's going to be where we're going to dig in. I want you guys to choose your pieces between now and then and start working on them. And then I'm going to talk about how to get it up to a performance level for the first recital.
And we probably ought to write up that what you just said and post it in the community, because people are they're not finding that link because they
Got you.
can't read it.
Yep. All right, so where to find the music? We already addressed this a little bit, talking about IMSLP and Clarinet Institute. Those are only for things that are not in copyright, which means that they were written before 1926. It may be a little bit later, but that's the basic thing. So there are graded lists of solo pieces out there, and I'm going to share 4 that I think are really great and helpful. The New York State solo listing, it's called NISMA, New York State Solo. It's association, I think, at the end. So they do grades 1 through 6. Grade 1 is the easiest. Grade 6 is the hardest. This company, Hickey's Music, when you click on this, it'll take you to just the level 1, or you can go, and then you can navigate from there. But I have you specifically level 1, which would be emerging. Intermediate would be level 3, and advanced would be 5 and 6. It's sort of like 1 and 2 is easy, 3 and 4 is considered intermediate, 5 and 6 are considered difficult. The Ohio solo and ensemble listing does it the opposite way. Class A is the hardest, Class B is intermediate, and Class C is easy. And Stanton's Sheet Music is a company in Ohio, and they also they sell every solo that's on this listing. 2 that I have not so much experience with is the Royal Conservatory of Music in Canada and the ABRSM in Great Britain, and there's also one in Australia. But they have grades 1 through 8. And so I know for sure that level 1 is the easiest, and level 4 is probably intermediate, and level 7 and 8 is definitely the most advanced. And you'll see a lot of similarities between these lists if you look at the level 5 music versus the Class A versus the level 7 and 8 music down here. But if this gives you a much more comprehensive list of published music that they are using right now in their different curricula. So for the solo and ensemble stuff at New York and in Ohio, they actually have a festival where students sign up to go and perform. They practice the music, and then they actually get graded on it as well as get comments. And I believe that the Royal Conservatory of Music and the ABRSM work similarly, except that you can actually pass into different grades in those 2 things. But I wanted to just quickly take you to a level 3 on Hickey. So I'll stop sharing this, and then I'll do intermediate for Stanton's, just so that you guys can see what kind of comes up. All right, so share again. This is the NISMA list here, and it starts, these are all published pieces, but Albinoni is a composer from the Baroque era. Here's a Bach era on the G string, as I mentioned earlier. And sometimes they let you see inside. Yeah, it doesn't look like they will, but you can of course look it up on a different website if you wanted to. And then in Ohio, here is some Class B stuff. And I think if I looked up God, he would be here. Nope. Oh, they do it by title. Gotta love it. So I'm gonna look up F and see if Fantasy Stück is there. Nope, but several songs. Fantasy Pieces, Opus 73 is a Schumann piece, and that would probably be somewhere on your list, Marilyn, I would imagine. But
it's in the I got it in intermediate.
Yeah, but it's tricky because like some parts of it are actually quite hard.
I think a lot of people did fantasy pieces in the community. The other thing that's tricky about that one is it goes into 5 or 6 different names. And I should point
Yes.
out, particularly when you're going for the Baroques, you can't always go by the name of the piece because there will be different arrangements. So ABC's arrangement of fantasy piece or of Bach cello suite might be a lot easier or more difficult than Michelle Anderson's arrangement of cello suite. So when
Right.
you're getting the transcriptions, you can't always go by the name. Sometimes you have to look at that will also be particularly true of pop pieces because there will be 50 million different arrangements and some might be
Yeah.
hard and some might be easy.
Exactly. And the keys make a difference. And so
And
that's for really
the
looking at
keys
that.
make a difference, certainly.
So see, you can see this is spelled with a PH here. And then if we go to the Ohio one, it's spelled with an F, but then it's the euphonium part, not the clarinet part. So you want to be aware of exactly what you're looking for and very sure of what you want.
Opus
But
numbers
anyway,
are handy for that purpose. That makes sure how many symphonies, how many rhapsodies are out there?
right. Okay, last little thing I want to address, but I think these are all really reputable places to look is really what I was getting at. And I think it does help to understand how they're organized. So I just want to
One more
mention
thing quickly, Debbie. Camco is a great place Camco Music is a great place to search because it lets you peek inside and it has everything great. Has it by grade, it has it by
wonderful.
genre, it has it by period. Camco has a lot of sorting flexibility if you really want to look for pieces that way.
Oh, terrific. All right. So I know that if you are in Michelle's community, you already have awareness of Tom Play and some other things like that. I don't know that much about it, but Marilyn's going to talk about it. But I do want to share my favorite YouTuber, piano accompaniment person, and that is his page is oh gosh, I just tried to end the meeting. That was good. All right, here we go. So it's called Color is the Piano. He has a how to use it, but then that fantasy piece that I was looking at, just a minute. If you go to fantasy piece Color is the Piano, he will have the movements and tell you the tempo he's going. And I think that these are really lovely. And one other thing that I enjoy, I have to stop sharing because I have to reshare, is that you can control the speed of it actually. So if we just chose this movement, for example, it's the first movement, probably there'll be a commercial. Oh, yeah.
Hi, my name's Enrique. A little thing I love about Chick-fil-A's Spicy Deluxe
There we go.
sandwich is you get that rich flavor of the chicken and
All right. So he usually counts off beforehand. Not on this one. And the other thing that you can do if you needed to practice it and you needed to make it slower than what he was going, you can bump it down to 0.75. So Marilyn heard my young student Griffin perform a piece in our recital in the summer, and he practiced with his piece with this Color with the Piano accompaniment a bunch before he met with the real pianist, the real live pianist we had for the rehearsal. And it was so helpful because he was practicing performing with his accompaniment so that when he went to play with a real pianist, he already knew exactly what he needed to do. But now I'm going to turn it back over to Marilyn because she's going to share a little bit more about all the accompaniment options that she knows about and because she's using them as a regular thing.
And now I've got to find my screen share again. The challenges of this activity.
That's right.
Okay, the way I actually started this website and the history from many years ago is I was looking for what I had all of these apps and sources for music, and I was having trouble keeping track of them. So I built this index of what I'm now calling it's a product directory. And it's not a place to buy this stuff. It's just a place to find out that it exists. So it's divided into categories. So there's one for collaboration, education, if I wanted to find fingering charts, if I wanted to find scale gear, if I want to find microphones, anyway, all of that stuff. But the two that are appropriate for this session is there's one here for sheet music, which I'm not going to go into right now. And there's one here for collaboration. And if I look at play along accompaniments, which is just what Debbie was talking about, there's a whole list of sources for play along accompaniments, and you can click the link and find out more about them. So if I want to know about AVRSM, actually with their books, they sell books with CDs so that you can actually practice the music with the CD. Here's Clarinet Institute that Debbie was talking about. They sell. I should warn you that anytime you're dealing with the internet, there's always a quality issue, and Clarinet Institute, in my opinion, at least, trades quantity for quality. They have 60 million different things, and you have to wade through them and find out what's good. And IMSLP is sort of in the same category, but they will sell play along accompaniments. They have I think 2 CDs full of piano tracks. If you like to play jazz, here's a winner. Jamie Abersol has wonderful jazz tracks and books to go with them. I think this is Debbie's, the one Debbie was just talking about. Here's another web place here. This one's a pretty. Anyway, you can just at your own leisure go through this list and look for places that you might find music.
Is Tom Play on the next page, Marilyn?
Tom Play is indeed on the next page.
So I think that for me, Tom Play and those YouTube, that YouTube guy in particular, I think are the best ones. I think Smart Music is useful for practice, but not so much for performing.
I think Smart Music is, I would say that they're moribund because Tom Play has sort of taken them over.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely agree that Tom Play is the best. I find those YouTube. Here's one other thing I should have said. Anything you can get on YouTube, you can always slow down and speed up just with the YouTube facilities. I find those things not as good as I would like. Feel like I have much more control with Tom Play, or if I have an MP3 that I can download then there are slow downers that will give you much more control over the slow downing process than you get just on YouTube. But here again, you're getting into the need for more technical tech skills than some people might have. This is why if you're just starting out with the recital thing, I would say try to stick to unaccompanied because there's a lot less to worry about.
Agreed. I think that's where I would start. If you are an emerging player, I would do something without accompaniment. If you are an intermediate player, but you want to do an accompaniment, then lean towards a little bit easier of a piece. Same thing if you're advanced and you've never done something with accompaniment, then lean a little bit lower so that you can kind of combine all those skills together in a way that makes you feel good about what you're doing rather than nervous.
The important thing to me, the overriding thing with the recital is I want to come out of it feeling good about myself. I don't want to come out of it saying, "Oh, I really screwed this up." That's not a good feeling to have. So anything you can do to avoid that, do it.
Yep. So with that, I think we are complete, but I would love it if anybody had any questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video.
Okay, wait a minute. Here, Melissa's got it. Melissa Collins has a good comment here.
Okay.
Trinity College of London has a great selection of it's another one of those RCM, maybe RSM things, but they lean toward jazz. They have some very good jazz material in their
nice
in their setup.
Fantastic. So I'll stop the recording now. Thank you guys all for attending. I hope you found this helpful, and I will be happy to answer some questions.